how are everybody doing this evening?
Doing
So we
well.
a
Doing
little
good.
that's good. Little technical issue. We did not go live on Instagram, but I will make sure that it is over there tomorrow. But I just want to welcome everybody for coming in. We really appreciate you guys. Welcome to Generational Perspective, where we share our knowledge and wisdom from different perspectives. Each of us brings a unique perspective to the topic that we're discussing today. And today's topic is freedom from addiction through Christ and community. So I want to welcome our guests. I want to welcome Cayla Nicely.
Hi.
Welcome. And Laura White. Welcome. And then we have Vivian Tipper. Welcome. And I am your host, Lisa Keeton. So the scripture states in Revelations 12:11, and they overcame him, which is the devil, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. And so these beautiful ladies have come to share their testimonies so that others might be saved or might be helped or led in the right way. So I'm going to start with Cayla because God allowed her to birth wayfinders out of her journey of addiction. So
Mhm.
Kayla, you want to tell us a little bit about your journey and your story?
Sure. So my name is Cayla, and my journey has definitely been a long one. So I didn't necessarily grow up in church. So my faith walk has been a little bit rocky. Um, but my family they were believers, but we were kind of casual churchgoers. So I didn't really have a good foundation for faith or anything like that. Um, I had kind of a rocky childhood a little bit too. So that kind of caused me to have a lot of doubts in my teens about faith in general. Just kind of convinced myself that I didn't believe any of that mumbo jumbo, and but through a whole lot of crazy things, I actually started drinking when I was about 15, and it didn't start out as a I'm going to do this all the time kind of thing. It was like I'm just going to try it, um, and then the more the more things that I went through in my teenage years, the more I leaned on alcohol to kind of numb that. Um, and I think the catalyst for me was when my biological father passed away. I was 17 years old, and we were not on speaking terms. And so um, I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions and my feelings, and I just wanted to. It was all bad, and I wanted to make it go away. So I kind of dove a little bit deeper into my drinking. I wound up pregnant at 18, and then I met my wonderful husband, and I married him when I was 19. And that was when I got saved. My husband grew up in church, and he took me to church, and I saw and I felt something there that I had never seen before. And so I, gave my life to the Lord, but still wasn't quite doing the walk. Um, getting a grasp on it, but not really, getting into it. Um, Unfortunately, I was still drinking, and so I did wind up divorced at 24, and then remarried at 26 to the same man. Lovely man. I love him so much. Um, and then I decided to get sober at 27. So I got sober through AA and working, the 12 steps of AA. AA saved my life. I love that program, and I loved my steps. Um, when right around 2015, my husband and I actually found a church that we felt like we felt at home at, and we started getting heavily involved in the church with volunteering and being in community with some of our um, some of our church members. I still kind of felt like I was different because I, for some reason, and I don't know, I think it was mostly in my own head, you know.
Mhm.
But I felt like I was so much different than the people that we were going to church with, because everybody else grew up in church and they knew all of
Mm.
these, you know, scriptures, and they, you know, and I didn't. I had this like really murky past that I was very hesitant to talk about, and I felt connected, and yet like so very disconnected, because I didn't
Mm.
have that community, or any kind of commonality with anybody. So in 2019, you know, I really just kind of like cried out to the Lord. I was like, Lord, I really, I miss having people that I can talk to about what I'm going through, and people that will understand what I'm going through right now. Um, and then in 2021, he kind of gave me this vision. He was like, you know, you want this community of people. And I, you know, I had fallen away from my AA meetings for a little bit, but I wanted to be able, and I can go back to AA anytime, but I wanted to be able to talk about my faith. You know, I
Yes.
really started
Mhm.
walking with Jesus when we got involved with the church, and I wanted to be able to openly discuss, you know, the Bible and scripture, and pray with people when we work with them in the program. Um, and so I was struggling to find that community. And, you know, the Lord just kind of put it on my heart. And he was like, you know, you should just start it. And
Mhm.
so that's what we did. We approached our pastor, and I was like, hey, I have this vision. And I really feel like, you know, our community needs something like this. Um, and I asked him to put out feelers in our church to see if anybody else in our church felt the same way. That's how I met Miss Vivian. She was at that very
Mhm.
first meeting. So yeah, and we've been doing Wayfinders, and we've been in community together since 2021.
And that's a blessing. That is a blessing.
It's been
And
wonderful.
so we're going to come back and ask you some questions a little later, but I want Laura to get a chance to share her story. So then that way we can pull everything together.
Okay, yeah. So di- I differ where I grew up. I grew up in church. I grew up here in Jacksonville. My memories start around the age of 8. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It's a severe form that didn't respond well to medications. The disease spread really fast when I was younger, and I had my first major surgery. I had my first major surgery to remove my colon at the age of 11. Um, After a few more surgeries, I seemed to be healing and growing as a kid.
Mhm.
Um, but I was going to school and playing soccer, and they wanted me to come in for a routine scope. And on the way out with the routine scope, there was some complications that caused severe damage. Um, there's somebody else's. Um, sorry. It caused severe damage, and I ended up having to have several other surgeries to fix it. And you know, I had an amazing youth pastors, and my mom was always with me, and my dad, you know, he provided for us. And you know, I just really wanted to be normal, and I just couldn't seem to find that. And after in 8th grade, when these complications arose, I really started to get angry, and I wasn't fully angry and, you know, trying to escape yet, but I was like, okay, well, maybe once we get this fixed, you know, I'll be able to be normal again. And so I ended up having to get an ileostomy bag in order to heal. And about a year later, I wanted to reverse. And so they said, you know, we can only do that if you do preventative medication. And so I just said, okay. And of course, as soon as I got the preventative medication, I declined in health. I lost a lot of weight and ended up having to go on IV nutrition for a whole year. Um, at this time, though, I was so ready to have the bag gone, my ileostomy gone, that I was willing to do anything. And I had figured out that the pain pills that they gave me, you know, I was able to escape the pain that I was in, the world of agony. and just, take as many as I want and, continue on and ignore everything around me. And I started to push everyone away from me as I strived to be normal, And so my doctor ended up telling me, the only thing we have for you is to give you the ileostomy back, and that's how we think you're going to be able to live and to thrive. And, of course, as a teenager, I didn't accept that. And me and my mom, we started looking for different doctors in order to get essentially what I wanted done. And we found one in Western Florida, and he told me he could fix me. But we found out that the disease had spread to my small intestines, and it was very rare. They really had never seen that before. And so he removed a good portion of my small intestines and gave me a permanent ileostomy with no way to reconnect. And it was devastating. I woke up and I didn't even get to see the surgeon. And they sent me home, and I ended up getting a bad infection and ended up going to Mayo Clinic. And he had told me, you have a fistula connected to your intestines from your intestines to your incision. And so when we put a wound back on or we try to suck this infection out, we're not sure what kind of damage it's going to do to your bowel or how long you will have to live afterwards if we can't get this infection out. So that Sunday, I remember vividly, it was the first time I'd ever really been knocked out by the power of God. And I was prayed for, knocked on my butt, and I just woke up feeling different. And I knew that something was different. So we went and had surgery. And after surgery, the surgeon came in. He says, I don't know what happened, but he showed me 2 x-rays, and one had a fistula and one didn't. And he's like, so we're able to put the vacuum in and we're able to get this infection out. And I've been in remission for over 10 years now from then. But, that wasn't the end. I was so mad and angry. I ended up running away from everything I'd ever known, going down the wrong roads and choosing the wrong things. And at the same age, 27, I realized I had to get sober. It was get sober or stay on the streets the rest of my life. And I knew God was calling me. I was just so angry. And I remember going to rehab. I went to Teen Challenge, and thank God I did. But I was beside myself and trying to figure out why I had to go through what I went through. Why, did I have to suffer? I would sit for days and watch people walk by and just wonder, what does it feel like to feel good? Like when you don't have a time before trauma to go back to, like you don't even know yourself. So you've got to learn yourself all over again. And he brought me to this verse, John 9:3. And it says, it wasn't because of my parents' sin or because of mine. It was because it was to show the kingdom's glory of God through my testimony. So, and that really touched me, and it momentum me forward to be able to grow in him in rehab. And I was able to share my testimony so many times, and I ended up coming back home, and I went back to my amazing church. And like Cayla was saying, I just couldn't find my people, and somewhere to feel comfortable, somewhere to learn and use my tools that I had learned. And so I ended up, falling again. And I met my husband, and he helped me get sober. And I was, let me backtrack here a bit. I had gotten into a bad wreck. And after that, and I was in ICU for 2 weeks, and I was able to detox and get sober. And I've been with my husband. He's been the calm to my storm. And he's just the most calmest human being I've ever had in my life. And it's just amazing how he got brought into my life, and amazing what God is doing through our life. And I ended up crying out to God, just asking him, what do I do? Do I stay here or do I move? Like, what do I do? And so I cried out, and he said, move. So I moved, and I found a community, and I found a family, and I found Wayfinders, and I found my friend Cayla and my friend Vivian, and I'm able to sit with them every week and be a family and talk with them about things that we're going through that are like-minded and like things that we can uplift each other when we fall, or, correct each other when we need to. But yeah, that's has been my story.
Sorry. Well, wow, this a lot. This
Yes,
is
sorry.
a lot. So they each gave their testimony. Now
It
Vivian
is.
is going to give her testimony.
Yeah, so I actually come from the other side of, I help to lead Wayfinders Families, which focuses on the families of the addicts. And so I was raised in church. I told Lisa, I was like, I don't ever remember not going to church. I don't ever remember not having God in my life. And so when my son, um, when he was in high school, he dabbled, he smoked pot, he did things like that. But he kind of got in with a bad crowd, and he ended up going into the military, which we thought was really great. And of course, he deployed to Afghanistan, and when he returned, he was more broken than when he left. He was and he had gotten injured, and they gave him pain meds, and that kind of started his journey, which ultimately it led to when opioids kind of dried up on the streets, it led to heroin and eventually fentanyl. But it's like I prayed all the time. I mean, because that's what I knew is like when something's, whenever something's wrong, it's like God's there and he's going to help you and he's going to be there for you. But the one thing about it, and I always say this, is I became addicted to trying to fix him. And, even though I was praying, I didn't give God full control. A lot of people say, that you have to let God. And, I would be like, okay, it's yours. And then I'd take it back. And until, I finally realized that I couldn't control it. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make him better. Now looking back, I know that God wanted him. He didn't want me. He had me. And he wanted my son to realize that, that was not what God wanted for his life. So eventually my husband and I decided that we were done enabling. We couldn't, we had gotten temporary custody of our granddaughter due to the drugs. And, we talked about this in Wayfinders. A lot of times addicts will use children as pawns. They will use those children because they know as a grandparent, you're not going to let your grandchildren suffer. You're not going to let your grandchildren go through things. But when my granddaughter was no longer there, it was like, okay, we're done. And we told him, we love you. We're always going to be here for you, but we're not going to enable you, and we're not going to, have any part of this lifestyle that you've chosen to live. That was in April. In July, my son did overdose, but by the grace of God, he was saved. In August, he came to us and said, I don't want to live this way anymore. And in August, that was 4 years that my son has been sober. He is extremely close to God. It's just, he's everything that we always knew he could be. And which, it's all because of God. I have no doubt of that. None of it is due to me. But because of that, and I've said this to Lisa, is I believe that God puts us through things so that we can use those things to help other people in those situations. And because of this, as Cayla mentioned, I've been wanting to be part of a family's support group for a long time. I do a lot of support for particularly mothers that have lost their children, which is extremely difficult, because the overdose rate is extremely high. And but like I said, I think the biggest thing that I've learned through all this is, that God is totally in control. Because looking back, there's no doubt.
And that is wonderful. What I love about everybody's story is that it's different. You know, you have Cayla who wasn't in church and she went through something, and then you have Laura and Vivian who were in church, but Laura is, made her own decisions, and then Vivian was put into a situation. So all three situations are different, but in the end, God is getting all the glory. And so that is just a wonderful testimony from everybody because even I have a story. I'm more on the family side and where my dad was an alcoholic. And so I can relate to some of the things that Vivian went through, as far as her helping other families, where I've been to 3 meetings so far with Wayfinders, which I'm going to be totally honest. I went just to ask these ladies to be on the program. I did.
She
I
did.
didn't go. I didn't go with any
And we
expectation
sucked her
That's okay.
in.
other than to go and ask them to be a part of the program. And I went, and I'm telling you, I have been back, 3 times now? And
Mm.
I'm telling you, the meetings have helped me to see things that are inside of me. And so one of the big things is I didn't realize I was still unforgiving, and I didn't realize I was still bitter about some of the things that have happened in my childhood because of having an alcoholic father. And so the meetings are a blessing. So whether you have an addiction to something, or you dealing with somebody who had an addiction, or you were raised up in that kind of environment, then help. Therapy. I never thought about going to therapy. To me, it's kind of like therapeutic, and I can go, and everybody at the meeting is just open and honest, and they're there because they want to be there. And so I can be open and honest because you know what? Now I want to be there. And I didn't even know God has a way because I didn't know that I need to be there. So I am so happy about that. But Cayla, in your story, when you were talking, is really interesting that God gave you this vision. And so he put you through what you had to go through in order for you to set up Wayfinders. And
Yeah.
that is, and he uses all of us in that way. You might have, like I was thinking about Mad, the mother of drunk drivers, right? And somebody had to go through that to start something to help other people, right? And you went through what you went through for Wayfinders.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so God uses all of us, right, in a way that he wants to get glory out of our lives, and not how we think that we should be given glory to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my questions for you is, I know you went through a lot of transitions and stuff like that, and you have overcome a lot, but do you ever get discouraged with trying to help other people to come through, or how have you dealt with that? Because a lot of times we do. Even Vivian said it with her. You're trying to save the person, right? But you can't. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So this vision to help other people actually started way before Wayfinders. It started when I got sober. I kind of just woke up one day and, God was like, hey, I want you to go help other people. I want you to, you know, share what you've been given. And so I thought that the way to do that was to go to college, get a degree, work in, a field and do addiction counseling. And so I did. I spent 7 years getting a degree in psychology, graduated, and then I found myself stuck in this rut of like, well, I can, get the certification to do the counseling, but I have to be working under a psychologist. But the psychologist won't take me until I have the certification. So, it's kind of like I still had this heart and this desire to help people. But when Wayfinders came about, it was like it was almost like God was telling me, you are still going to help people. It's just not going to look the way that you thought it was.
Yes.
There's no rehab in Malibu. It's just, you're going to do it for free, and you're going to do it every Friday night. And I could say it does get discouraging, when you have this calling on your life, and let's say we're helping somebody or working with somebody, and they relapse, or they kind of ghost you, and you don't hear from them again. you start to question, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And my answer to all of that is like, he always finds ways to show me that, yes, this is still what you're supposed to be doing. And I don't feel like he has called me away yet. So this is where we're at.
And that is, I mean, that's really good, because walking with Jesus, you can get discouraged sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking when you were just talking about, you have had relapses, right? So you got to give that same grace and mercy to someone else that you needed.
Yeah.
And that's the way God works. So you got to pass on.
Yeah.
But even when you're discouragement, you still got to, keep yourself lifted up and say, you know what, I still need to go through, because you know what, somebody sit here and help me go through. So that's a
And
blessing.
I think that is something unique that, groups like this offer to people in recovery, is that we do know that walk. We know what you're going through. We know that what it takes to get to what it took to get to where we are today. So there's no one better to understand what your struggles than somebody, a group of people that have already been through it.
That is true. So Laura, your first surgery at 8 years old,
I was
right?
11, but yeah, 11 years
11?
old. Yes. I had my
You were
colon
having
removed.
pain and going through stuff since the time you
Hmm.
were 8, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And so it started out with prescription medication
Right.
as your painkiller, right? So
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about, like when your doctor trying to figure out, you know what, you're no longer in pain. You're just coming to him to medicate.
Yeah. That didn't really happen until the end. They kind of just showered me in pain pills. Anything I wanted, I got it. So, they just kept upping them and giving them to me. And so I remember one of the last times I asked for a refill, and there was really no reason to get it. He gave me 4 refills. So, but that was the last time. And he told me it would be the last time. He says, you should be good now. You should be healing. You should wean off of these. And that was it. And, I started doctor shopping and going to different doctors, going to the dentist, having teeth work done, just because I didn't know anybody on the street yet. And so, it ended up to where I stopped taking anything, and I was sober for like a year or two, if you could call it sober. I was drinking at 19, but I ended up getting married and leaving the house, and he we were apart, and he was employed and I was back at home, and I ended up getting in the wrong crowd and on a lot of drugs and hanging out with the wrong people, and ended up getting divorced, and just same old until I found the people that had the street stuff, and it was the end from there. And I just got myself in multiple situations to where I was homeless for a long time, living in I thankfully had a car, and someone allowed me to sleep outside their house, but nonetheless, I was tired of living that way. And my mom, she, all moms can be enablers. They love their kids. But I praise my dad and my mom for sticking their foot down and not allowing me to come back when I was living that way. And they said, the only way you can live with us is if you go to rehab first. And so that it was either go to the streets or the unknown. I didn't have anybody with me or a car, or go to rehab. And it may have started that way, but that I'm thankful I made that decision, that it was my only way out. But, God is our only way out. So.
That is true. So, Vivian, we're going to talk about tough love, because Laura's parents did the whole tough love thing, right? And they told her, you have to do this in order for us to allow you back in. So tough love is not easy, right, Vivian? Because you have to deal with your son. And so tell us about how you were able to say, okay, enough is enough.
So it was, and I think we even talked about this past week. Well, my husband, it was a lot easier because he had been kind of there for a while. But, to the point of you were talking about mothers, it was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do. as far as my children, because, one of the things that, and as a mother of an addict, you don't sleep. Because you're constantly waiting for that phone call, that knock on the door. It's just, it's a constant fear that you live with. And, that was probably the hardest thing for me, was to say, to basically turn my back. Because, and, God gave me a peace about it. He really did. You know, I that's the only way that I can say I did it, because, not answering his phone calls, not responding to, all the manipulation, it was hard. It was extremely hard. I had the home he lived in, like, neighbors would call us and say, hey, they're shooting guns, there's all this stuff. And we're like, oh, well, if the cops, call the cops. We don't want to know what to tell you. So just, it was hard, but, I can only say it was through God, because I couldn't have done it any other way. Because I had a peace about it, and I believe that came from God.
Yeah, I think about, I had a younger brother who was at one time seriously on alcohol and drugging, and my parents actually shipped him to California with me. And I'm thinking, because he went through rehab, I'm thinking it's going to be fine, everything's going to be great. And he just came out there and he found that same group of people to hang out with and to be with, right? And then he was coming in late, so I'm trying to go to school full time in college and work this little part-time job. And then I got him coming in and he done been drinking and partying. And finally one day I was just like, you got to go, just get out. I can't do this anymore. And he left, but of course it caused a rift, with my parents. They're like, we can't believe you put him out, we can't believe you did this. And I was just like, you know what, he's not mine, he's not my responsibility. But now that I have a child, I understand that heartache that they have, because
Yep.
it's not, yeah, letting go of your child, it's hard. But at that time I couldn't see it, and so I was just like, I don't care, he's got to go, he can't stay here, which was a good thing. But a lot of times, I think another thing that I brought up in one of the meetings was borders. We don't set boundaries
Right.
around different things. So how do you guys deal with boundaries? And anybody that wants to answer can answer.
Well, I had to learn to say no. I was a people pleaser to the core, and I just was so worried about what everyone else thought around me that I couldn't do anything. But I used to be asked, how do you do anything in the day if you're always worried about someone's feelings? And I can't. So, but I had to learn to actually implement them, and it actually made me nauseous to do it. It was like, I was like, I can't do this. And then once I would do it, I was like, oh, man, that wasn't so bad. And, the person wasn't mad at me. Okay, well, maybe they're sane and I'm not, so just learning how to know what you can do and what you can't do. And then also when you have those people in your life that just bring negativity and there's nothing good with them. And you've got to set that boundary of how much time you're actually going to give them. And because your sobriety is the most important thing. And if you're around someone that is causing you to want to use or is causing you to be triggered, then you may need to set a boundary with how you hang out with that person or even talk to them. And that can be hard as well.
Yeah, that can be, especially if it's family and somebody's close to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
talk
that,
a lot about,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Vic.
I was just going to say, we talk a lot in families about boundaries, because it is harder for families to set those boundaries, because they want to help them, they want to fix them. So.
And then I think for us, it is learning what Laura was saying, learning what we can and cannot control. Yes, we are a Christ-centered group, but we do have tools to use. Like we do use the 12 steps. We took the 12 steps back to their they're basic Christian principles. You know, we have a book that has scripture all throughout the book, and
If you guys
um,
can see it.
yeah, and there's
There it is.
amazing truth in that book. We say the Serenity Prayer before every meeting. We've had long discussions about what can we control. I can control me, and anything outside of me is where I'm allowed to set boundaries. So that's just, you know, I am allowed to choose how I want to be treated, and um, I'm allowed to, you know, choose who I hang out with. Like Laura was talking about, you know, if we're changing people, places, and things, you know, when we change, when we get sober, and even when we get saved, you know, we become new people. We
Yeah.
do a complete about face, and that's what it's about. That's what recovery is about.
And so that's good. So you guys have found, I mean, they use the word, now the young people use the word tribe. So now you found your tribe in
Yeah.
Wayfarers
Yeah.
where you feel, so because in the beginning, I think you said you didn't feel like you fit in, or you was missing a big, huge chunk out of your life. And so you need to find people who probably, did some of the similar things that you have been through. They've gone through them. And so now you feel, hey, this is my tribe. This is my family. I can be me all
Mhm.
throughout and not
Yeah.
hide anything or not have to put on a facade at church. And
Right.
that's wonderful. It's freeing.
It is very.
Yeah.
It is freeing. And that's what God calls us to be, free in him. And so
Yeah.
that's a wonderful testimony. And so does anybody have any like last minute words of wisdom they want to share with the people out there, or anything that you would like to share or help somebody?
Mhm. Just like for me, I mean, just community, you know, if you feel, you know, alone in what you're walking through, find a community of people who understand what you're going through. You know, God didn't put us on this planet to do this life alone. You know, the one thing that he said that was not good was for man to be alone. And
Mhm.
so if, you know, you find a community of people that, you know, will encourage you and support you and lift you up, you know, I think that's going to be one of the main things.
And that's a blessing. Anybody else?
So I will
I mean,
say,
yeah.
we. Oh, go ahead. Do you
Go
want to
ahead.
go, Laura?
No, you go.
I was just going to say, from a family perspective, we say something all the time. We didn't cause it. We can't control it, and we can't cure it. But one of the biggest things, back to what Kayla's talking about, because especially from a family perspective, there's so much stigmatism around addiction that you don't want anybody to know. Um,
Mm,
you don't want to share it with anybody. You want to put on that facade that everything's wonderful, and don't be that way,
Hmm.
because this community, that's what we're here for. Is we're here. We understand. Nobody judges, and you shouldn't feel that way, that you have to hide behind a facade of nobody knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest introvert until you get to know me, and then I'm crazy. But it's very difficult to open up, and especially a lot of times to people you've known your whole life, and
mhm.
when you want them to think the best of you, or you're not sure how to approach them because they have no idea what you're going through. So, I would suggest, encourage finding a community. That you don't have to leave your people, but stepping out into the unknown, out of your comfortability, to be able to say, yes, this is time to get sober.
Mhm.
And, not being sober, it causes us to isolate. We got those thoughts going on in our heads, I want to be
Yeah.
alone so I can do this, So I just encourage, to ignore those thoughts. Sometimes they can be loud, but we can be louder. And I say, find a community.
I want to tell you, ladies, thank you. This has been wonderful. We got some great comments. I didn't want to share because I know you guys were a little nervous, but we have words of encouragement. People are saying thank you for your transparency. God is truly gracious. People are saying, God is good, and so are you, ladies. And so this has been, a blessing that you guys have come on and shared. I truly appreciate it. I've been helped. I'll be back at Wayfinders. If you're in Jacksonville, Florida, Wayfinders is Friday night at 6 o'clock on Main Street. And I don't know the address, but I know it's
It's
Bold City Church.
13519 North Main Street, and we are there every Friday night at 6 o'clock. We worship together, we pray together, we talk, and it's a lot of fun.
It
Mhm.
is. And I have
Except
been,
Good Friday. We're not there on Good Friday. Don't come on
No,
Good Friday. Everybody's in church.
King Jesus.
so once again, I just want to say thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who's logged in, who's gotten on, even the people who will watch the replay. It has been a blessing. And just, you know what, enjoy your evening. And we will see you guys the next time. Have a good
Awesome.
night.
Bye.
Bye.